camping can be great. You get to spend some time in your own separate bed away from normal. You don't have any of the hassles of usual. You're usually far enough away from full reception and access to things that even if somebody can contact you, you can easily say no to any obligations. But sometimes hiking sucks. You have to have good legs, you have to carry everything with you on top of your back, and it's just not great. Hi, welcome to Wanderlust Wanderings. It's been a while since I had a video up on this channel. In the time since my last video, I went to Hong Kong, which I loved so much that I took a dive without checking the bottom properly, and then spent the next year, or most of the year, in hospital, and spent most of the rest of the year after that recovering from the fact that I spent so long lying in a hospital bed. Anyway, all craziness. But at the moment, I have decided that as part of my recovery, it's very important that I try a million different styles of camping and record them for you with some of the pros and cons of each one to better help me and others decide which form of camping is right for them. What that means for us at the moment is that it is time for me to try some bike packing and to take you along with me for the trip. Woo! In the wise words of that brilliant man Bilbo Baggins, as recorded by J.R.R. Tolkien, I'm going on an adventure! Made it to the van! Today, I am cycling from Tanunda to Kapunda. I also did an earlier stretch just on the outskirts of Gawler before deciding to ditch the bag and come back to the van to cycle further up, which I'll get into the reason why later. But for now, bikepacking is quite fun. For example, at the moment I'm going downhill, which means I'm not affecting anything and I'm not steering, so legs can be nice and relaxed here. But obviously the reverse side of that is that uphill can really be a struggle to get the pedals and push through everything. The first thing that I'll mention in relation to pros and cons is location. So sometimes directly on the road, so if you're not that good at pedaling or you tend to need wide space, you might want to make sure that you don't have one of those sections or walk that section. And then sometimes, like now, you're on a whole separate track where cars are not allowed to go on. It's only cyclists and pedestrians are few and far between and easy to skip past. And if you look, I'm even next to a long bed of roses. And you've got nice bridges. Today. Also, something to think about is that you got several road crossings. So if you don't know how to deal with them, or you see a vehicle coming, it might be worth walking these sections. But it's nice and easy to just pedal them. Sometimes intersections are too much to bother thinking quickly enough to deal with, so it's a lot easier to just walk them. Such as this one. And as an added bonus for you, right next to a bike park. Which I will not be going on today. With trails, sometimes get placed onto a bike-only track, which is wide enough that you don't have to worry too much. So, I should probably talk about why I decided to ditch the backpack. So, two main reasons. First, unlike on the bike, it's weight on my back that I notice, and it tires me out a lot more. So I decided, why deal with it? And two, is that inside that backpack is mostly my tent and sleeping equipment, and I've decided to just get picked up on the other end of this. So, I don't need to bring a tent and all the sleeping stuff. So, the Mawson Trail, as opposed to the Hyson Trail, which I was on last time, does not actually have a bunch of free campsites dotted all over the track, so that you can just sleep at one and it's free, and as long as you've got the food and tent and stuff, you're all good. Instead, obviously because they figured out that cyclists are a different breed of people who enjoy cafes and coffee, instead you're much closer to main thoroughfares, and you have, instead, it just dots along a lot of caravan parks and hotels and various boutique accommodation places that give you cabins. So it means that one, you have to pay for each of those, and I'm too much of a cheapskate to bother paying just to spend the night when it's close to home. And two, it means that if you really wanted, you could just choose to spend every night in a cabin or caravan park or something, which then has all the bedding included, which means you don't have to deal with bringing anything along. lunchtime, which means it's time for me to show you some of the goodies I have in this bag. Not that one can stay. Here is my Helinox chair, which means I get a nice comfy seat even out in the bush like here. Well, by the power of internet magic, I have managed to be taken home, which is quite nice because I was starting to get tired. So I thought I'd just go through a quick list of just a couple of the pros and cons and things to think about if you wanted to do any bike packing. So the first thing I should probably talk about is energy use. So the great news is that you don't need to carry all the stuff on your back, which is then one of the reasons why I did have a backpack on at the start of the day and then quickly realized why go to the extra muscle strain if I don't need to, and took it off. And with the bike, there's a million different ways to set it up and have storage containers for it. I'm thinking that the next thing I'd probably get for it is a cross tube thing so that everything I directly need is just down in front of me and between my legs. So that's brilliant. And having trails set up for biking is really nice when they exist. The downside of Australia is that most of the time they don't exist, and sometimes they'll just put you on the side of the road and be like, well, good luck, I guess. So then it's kind of that whole toss-up of how good are the other drivers around you and how well marked are things, all of which is a bit iffy here in Australia, so we'll get into that. The other thing to think about is just with overall accessibility and particularly sleeping. With bike packing, the trail I went on, the Mawson track, and then a lot of other trails from what I've heard, tend to focus on cafes and things like that, so you tend to go directly through towns, which then have caravan parks or accommodation options and nice food places to enjoy your food. So if you're looking to enjoy your time eating out at restaurants and cafes, etc., that's fantastic. If you're not, and you are hoping for a nice cheapskate way of just escaping for a bit, that'd be a bit harder because I don't know of any of the campsites. I think when you get to the north end, there might be a couple campsites that are free, but most of them you need to book ahead and pay for, which then doesn't really work with my style of adventuring, which tends to be much more like, okay, I'll plan this one, and if I rock up there with heaps of extra time, I'll just go to the next one, or if I don't quite make that, I'll just aim for this closer one. So you need to be a bit more thought out than I am. The other thing that I should mention is just physical ability and how much that factors in, because obviously one of the reasons I'm doing all these various styles is because I was physically damaged and I'm trying to build strength back up. So I will admit that bike packing is probably about equal with hiking when it comes to the physical ability you need. So no, you don't have to deal with any weight on your back, and you don't need quite as much strength in your legs often, as long as you're good with the gears and pedaling. But you need to have decent leg power and also decent stability and control with your hands and just overall balance to keep you upright and going in the right direction, especially given what I mentioned before about the traffic. You don't want to be next to a road and weaving around. Obviously there are routes where you can get away with that a little bit more, but it's still a bit of a hassle. So take that as you will. There's plenty of good, there's plenty of bad, so it's really just up to you and what you already have knowledge and experience with doing as to how you would feel about doing any bike packing. For me, I will probably take up bike packing again at some point, but not in the super near future that I'm just super raring to go as soon as I can. So take from that what you will, and as we go on a bunch of different camping adventures, that's probably one of the criteria I'll keep mentioning to you is how much do I enjoy it personally and how much would I do it again, which obviously doesn't affect you and your decision making, but it's nice for me to say.